to give him a proper introduction, ladies and gentlemen, I will switch to English because our next speaker flew in from Berlin this morning, and he's based in London, where he oversees GfK's global media business, covering research and data services for broadcasters, publishers, and digital clients. He's also an angel investor, and he wrote a couple of books. His latest book is called Simply 7. It's a guide to the 7 business models of the web. Please welcome to the stage Mr. Nico Waesche. Nico.
Hey.
Okay, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. It's so exciting to be here. It's a completely sold-out event. And I noticed that because a couple of my friends living here asked me whether I could get some extra tickets for this show. And I was like, I don't have any tickets. There's a huge waiting list. Conference organizers are not giving me any more tickets. You can't come in. And they were like, well, then you're just going to have to give me a kind of private, your whole speech. Just give it to me privately. We'll meet after the conference. And I was like, no, don't worry about that. I'm talking about data. It's all going to be about data. It's going to be about market research. It's not interesting. And in fact, that's why I'm the first speaker, because you guys are actually going to have to survive the next 20 minutes looking at this data. But it's not that bad, because what we did here is that I'm going to tell you a few words about GfK. I don't have to tell you that much about GfK, because GfK is part of the media fabric of the Netherlands, having set up the TV system and running the TV system for the past 50 years. But maybe I can tell you some things about what we're doing internationally, which is that we are 13,000 people worldwide in 100 countries. Media is one of our biggest and most important client sets. And what we do for media companies is we provide media companies with data and insights. To help media groups improve the monetization of their content and their audiences. So in general, that's what we do. I have the best job at GfK because I'm in charge of making our media clients happy worldwide. So I can meet media groups every day all around the world and find out what could they be using, what could they be needing, and it's a very, very exciting job. I'm super happy to be doing this. And I want to provide a little bit of an external perspective on the Netherlands today. And what we thought could be interesting is to see, Netherlands has a reputation of being a digital lab of Europe. So just yesterday, when I was meeting a very large German media group, which is one of the largest media groups actually in Europe, I asked them, what do you guys think about the Netherlands? And they said, well, if we want to get ideas about what we should do in publishing and broadcast in Germany, we often look at what Dutch companies are doing in the Netherlands, Dutch media groups. Holland and Scandinavian countries, Norway, Sweden, those are the examples of digital labs in Europe. This is where kind of the best practice gets set up first. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to see, does the data actually reflect that? Like, what can we see in our data about the Netherlands? Does that prove that this is really such a hot space? And we believe it is a hot space, and that's what I'm going to be subjecting you with some data in the next couple of minutes. But GfK is not just in the Netherlands. We're also kind of eating our own dog food. We also believe in the Netherlands. And so what we did recently, just on Friday, is we bought a company with a very strong they're coming out of the Netherlands, a Dutch technology company called Wakoopa. It's part of the Netquest group. Acquisition was just announced on Friday, showing that we also really believe in innovation made in the Netherlands. So let's look at the data. Let's look at, let's try to get an understanding, how crazy are the Dutch people actually. And, we do see they are pretty crazy. So we do have, let's say, data that shows that in the Netherlands, rates are much higher of using certain digital service than elsewhere in Europe. For example, we have one of the highest Twitter penetrations of all Europe. We have one of the highest Netflix penetrations in all Europe. And remember, Netflix was just launched in September 2 years ago. So, and this is still ramping up. We're going to look at Netflix a little bit more closely also in the next couple of minutes, because this is one of the most disruptive and most interesting trends taking place in the media industry. But then it's interesting too, is I was like, what? Can that be? is that possible? Teletext? What's wrong with you guys? But no, it's obviously, teletext is an extremely valuable service because Dutch people are spending a huge amount of time with teletext. You guys wouldn't be doing it if it wasn't good, right? So there's something there that's extremely valuable. 24 minutes a month, just with teletext by millions of users. So I think what we see here is, if we look at Snapchat then, more than 50% of Dutch teenagers are using Snapchat, which is also one of the highest penetration rates in Europe. NuNL, a huge success. We don't have quite similar success rates like that for information services in other European countries, coming almost indigenously. I mean, obviously, Sanoma is a European media group, but the NuNL offering is a very, very Dutch offering, information offering for Dutch users. And then you guys are addicted to word feud. I mean, what is that? That's also like this love of information, and you play it much more time with word feud than with Candy Crush. So in other countries, people would be spending much more time with Candy Crush than with something like Word Feud. So there's obviously some kind of love of information. But I think the main thing here that we have to see is that even though Dutch people are, very loyal users for information services like teletext, which is great, they also pick up new things and use new things. And I think that's the kind of thing that makes the Netherlands a special place. Picking up new things, experimenting with it. Maybe it doesn't work over a longer period of time, but doesn't matter. It's a very innovative place. Now let's look a little bit more at OTT and SVOD because of the disruptive phenomenon that OTT and SVOD has in the media industry. And so, as I already told you, Netflix is here, let's say, the market leader with a 23% penetration. But there are also other SVOD services are also being used in the Netherlands. And I think the interesting thing is here that it's not an exclusive use. So we're kind of going away from this world where people had that one, cable subscription that they really cherished. And people are doing a kind of a la carte usage of different services. They're mixing and matching. It's this skinny packages. Skinny packages are cool. And that's because there's some content in Netflix that's nowhere else, but then there's probably some content in Ziggo that's nowhere else, and the same with iTunes. So people are kind of picking and selecting with these skinny packages, and that's one of the most important things that please take away from what I'm going to tell you today is that one of the most important messages from me is this diversity. So even though the global platforms are huge scaling effects, massive amount of investment in these global platforms, there's always an opportunity next to the global platforms. It's this diversity part that's really important. And even if you're not one of the companies offering these other services, like a Ziggo or others in the Netherlands, you can be partnering with them. And I think that's another one of the messages for today. Now, Netflix, of course, if you go to any media conference, Netflix is the topic of discussion. And it is an amazing company. It truly is an amazing company. I was just in the US last week in Florida at a media conference, and I spent a lot of time also kind of just watching the differences between the Netflix people who were there, what they were talking about, kind of what capabilities they're bringing to the table, and the other media groups. If you want to know more about Netflix, one of the best sources of information, and I know you're all going to the party tonight of the MWG event, but after the party, you're getting home at 2 a.m. before you sleep, please read the Q4 letter of Netflix to its shareholders. Now, that is a 2-page or 3-page letter. And it has all the information in it about what Netflix wants to do in the next couple of years. It's an incredible kind of manifesto, so I can only encourage you to read it. You don't have to read it right now on the screen. I mean, it's obviously available on the internet. But there's a couple of kind of main messages coming out of that. The first one is about reach. Netflix now has 75 million members, subscribers worldwide. Their focus is very simple. It's to be available in all countries except China. They always add, except China. So, and that is huge. They also believe that theirs is the better TV viewing experience, by far. by far is their TV viewing experience, they claim, better than linear TV. And the reason that it is basically because of some other things that they mention in the letter. They put a huge emphasis on mobile. And I think that's kind of really important for us to recognize this importance of mobile platforms. Not because of the mobile screen only. I mean, we won't be looking at everything on Netflix through a mobile screen. Maybe in some countries like Indonesia, yes. Indonesia has a 95% internet use through mobile phones. Only 5% use the internet through desktop. Maybe in countries like Indonesia, yes. But the most important aspect of mobile that we have is the aspect that is the control function for other screens. It's kind of the command center. It's where you have your playlists. It's where you have your preferences. It's where you have your payments stored. So the mobile phone is an essential element of Netflix strategy. And finally, of course, the most important part is data. Data, data, data. Those people are obsessed by data. Everything they do has something to do with data. There are dozens, if not hundreds, of data scientists working for this company. And data helps them, not just with the kind of obvious stuff, like the preferences, the recommendations. It helps them to reduce cost by identifying content that they should be licensing, or kind of advantages in their content buying strategy gets informed through data. Very, very important. Their marketing strategy, everything they do in marketing is informed by their data. And their marketing is so much more sophisticated, using all forms of digital channels and programmatic imaginable, so much more sophisticated than that of many, many other media groups in the US. So just a really short glimpse at Netflix. I'm told that I always have to turn around to look at the time, so I'm going to do that. So, okay, we're doing okay, I guess. At GfK, we have a framework in the way we think about this and when we talk to our media clients. And the framework it basically goes like this. We believe that data is the fundamental core of what media companies should be thinking about in the next coming years. It's the foundation. And data, in turn, if you have an advantage in data, if you have capabilities in data, this drives advantages and capabilities in mobile. And it helps you build a mobile presence and a mobile platform. And that in turn drives and promotes your reach on all screens. It's very simple. Data drives mobile, mobile drives reach. Now let's look in detail at those kind of different points that I just mentioned. We're going to start with the screens and start with the reach. We are not living in a world of the single screen anymore. It's all about screen specialization and screen proliferation. Now, I think that sometimes we're looking at the world in a very simplified way. So last year, the discussion was all about, well, tablets are going down a little bit. Mobile phones are getting bigger and bigger. So, we all start to think, okay, the mobile phone will be the one screen. And then, obviously, we shouldn't forget the television screen, very important part of everybody's entertainment experience. But there are so many more screens. There are watches, of course. There's the screen, the car. I mean, Google is working on having the self-driving car as a driving screen. There will be smart homes with fridges. Your fridge will have a screen, right? Virtual reality glasses. Your whole being gets kind of enveloped by a screen. These screens are proliferating. Screens are going to be a commodity. Screens are going to be everywhere. We're going to be completely immersed in screens. And that's what reach is going to be about. In order to show people advertising, you actually have to think about all of those screens. And we see that in the Dutch data. So in the Dutch data, we see that last year, the average Dutch person had 3.6 different screens each. So if somebody has 2 mobile phones, that didn't even count. Right? 3.6 different screens. And you can see the types of screens that are being used here, tons of different types of screens. Another interesting statistic which kind of really blew me away was, for example, smartphones. The whole kind of 60,000 people rushed out last year in the Netherlands to buy, a smartwatch. This is more than in Germany and the UK. I mean, in Germany, 20,000 smartwatches were sold. In the UK, 10,000 smartwatches were sold. And in the Netherlands, 60,000 smartwatches are sold. GfK just reported that the smartwatch usage or smartwatch buying is kind of stabilizing or going down slightly, yeah, that's because already like every single information pioneer in the Netherlands has already bought one, right? I mean, that is amazing, 60,000. And then virtual reality glasses, I mean, you know, what is this? You know, they're buying like the first set of virtual reality glasses on the market with 10,000 VR glasses sold. So this really shows that Dutch people are out there doing the innovative stuff, testing it out, even if it's the version 1. In Germany, people would never do that. You know, the Germans, most conservative technology adoption rates that you've ever seen, and they would never do that. So that's amazing. So let's go now a little bit and kind of zoom in on the mobile part. Mobile as the kind of command center, mobile as the control center for the other screens. Now, there's some smart people out there who are, you know, 10 times smarter than me. One of those is Benedict Evans. You know, he was a journalist in the UK, and he became partner at one of the most prominent venture capital funds in Silicon Valley, Andreessen Horowitz. And his quote about mobile phones, very nice. So he says, smartphones is the sun around which everything else orbits. And that's the truth, basically. It's the smartphone as a command center. But we cannot kind of forget the other side of the truth, which actually when John Doerr, who's, you know, one of those dinosaur vintage VCs out of Silicon Valley, everybody knows this guy's name. He's been around for, I think he invested in Apple, right? So he spoke about the 4 horsemen of the internet. Now, at that time, he was talking about the internet itself, but now it's the 4 horsemen of mobile. It's the capability of these global platforms investing millions and millions, investing billions to build these mobile platforms out. And that means that there's payment included. That means that your preferences are included. That means that there's ID services. When you walk with your mobile phone into a retail store environment, the retail store recognizes and says, ah, okay, it's you coming in, so we will show you on the screens in the retail store some discounts and things that you should be buying. So that's why the mobile phone is so important, but we really need to see the dominance of the global platforms. Now, do we see that in the Dutch data? Yes, we see it in the Dutch data. Now, first, take a look at that kind of inverted triangle on the left. You can see the amazing amount of time that Dutch people spend with these global platforms. Now, Amazon is not quite as present in the Netherlands as it is in other countries, so it won't have kind of that scope and reach as the others. And also, Apple isn't covered here, but if you just look at Facebook and Google, you know, 6.9 million people using Facebook properties for 6.5 hours a month. So I just heard that there was a Dutch journalist recently who tried to reduce his Facebook consumption by, or smartphone consumption by 1 hour out of, I don't know, the 8 or 9 that he had, and he was struggling with that, right? So we're spending a huge amount of time in these platforms. Now, Google has the same amount of reach, far less time spent with Google, but that's okay because we use Google in very different ways from what we use Facebook. What I really want to tell you about, however, is the other side of the chart. So it's not a picture of, it is global domination, but global domination with a lot of alternative and a lot of diversity and a lot of partnering opportunities. You know, there are definitely apps out there that Dutch people are spending a lot of time with and with a lot of reach. Horizon Go, 2 million users, 5 minutes. All of the different banking apps are highly popular. They're all showing up in the top 20 list of apps. By the way that we can measure this, the reason we can measure this so well, is that we have panels which are, you know, privately privacy insured and anonymized ways that we work with this data. But we have panels in which we actually measure on the smartphone of the panelist as well as on their desktop what they're doing, and so we actually know the amount of time that's being spent. This is not a survey-based approach that's being used here. If we look at new NL, I mean, that is 3.6 million people in 19 minutes. So this is, you know, you see the word feud again. This is kind of where the partnering opportunities are. There's a lot of potential there. So what does that really mean? If we look at the way that media has transformed itself, this is actually quite an important picture. It's about kind of the digital journey that people will take. And this is interesting for advertisers, it's interesting for brands, it's interesting for media companies. So the digital journey or the media journey in the past, you had these silos. You had television, you had digital, you had print. You had silos in ways of payment systems as well. You had silos in the way of e-commerce companies, retailers. Now, the interesting thing is that these platforms, which are taking up more and more of that space, so for example, Google integrating Google Wallet, integrating payments, Apple integrating payments, integrating a retail experience, Amazon coming from the other side, these platforms are not going to replace those silos one-on-one so that we're only dealing with these four horsemen of the internet. No, it's not. There's always pockets of other activity, which is very powerful and very important. One of the logos that we have here on the MWG Congress is Airbnb, for example. If you're doing anything in travel and hospitality, Airbnb has more rooms available globally today than any of the large hotel chains. So these are things that should not be ignored. These are partnering opportunities for you as a media company. But let's get to the data part. What can you do with data? Let me just turn around, look at the time. Uh-oh, it's very bad. OK, I have to speed up. Maybe they'll give me another 5 minutes. I heard that the conference started late, and we definitely have 5 more minutes. I'm pretty sure about that. So, right? 5 minutes. Give me 5 minutes, please. OK. So data. Data is important in so many different ways. What can you do with data? And I think we often think of data only kind of on the revenue side. So yes, we can do more cross-promotions with data. We can do links to e-commerce companies. We can do ad targeting much better. We might sell our ad inventory for a higher price if we associate it with data. But then there's also reduced costs. Reduced costs through knowing how your content is being used, being much smarter about content discovery, and even perhaps most importantly, it's the audience experience, which can be perfected through data. Now, how many of you have been to a media conference before? Many people. How many of you have heard the joke about teenage sex at a media conference? 1, 2, 3. This is a terrible joke. So, and every time, so somehow you guys are still OK because not many of you have heard it. But believe me, most media conferences I go to, eventually when they talk about data, out comes the joke about teenage sex. So it's like when I hear it already, I'm like, oh no, not again, that terrible joke, right? And you know it probably. It's about, big data is like teenage sex. This quote goes, big data is like teenage sex. Why? Because everybody talks about it, but nobody has done it. Right? So that's kind of what media companies say, right? And the reason I don't like that quote is, firstly, you can only hear a certain joke so many times, right? It's like, OK, we've heard it now for 10 times. But the more important thing is that's not actually true. There's many people having teenage sex. It's just not you. It's not the media companies. It's other companies having teenage sex. Look at all of these companies. It's the digital platforms. They're dying in data. They're using this data every day. They have 100 or more data scientists. It's the e-commerce giants that have tons of data. It's the subscription companies. They have tons of data. Programmatic companies have tons of data. They have more interesting data than you ever dreamt of. Programmatic companies even have location data in there that they can listen to, and they know where people are with their mobile phones. Just imagine what you can do with all of that relevant data. And the brands, there's Harry Decker out there, probably somewhere in the audience with Unilever. The big brands that are out there are building their own DMPs, and they're building their own kind of data engines that they can use to feed the advertising systems with. So out there, everybody's building this data advantage, except for the media groups. Maybe not in the Netherlands, because in the Netherlands we have much more advanced environment. I know that RTL is doing a lot with data, for example. But there's also a battle going on. So it's not, that fluffy world with the pink clouds out there that's, very happy-go-lucky. It's a data battle. When Apple allows ad blocking software on its mobile iOS, they're actually saying, we want to do the ads and nobody else should be doing those ads. When Facebook is inviting publishers into Facebook, they're providing these publishers with huge advantages because they're in a data environment that is extremely rich. They're in a monetization environment that is completely end-to-end. But it's also about not letting these publishing groups going into other platforms. So what we have here is we have a real wrestling for control in the data world, and it's very important that you remember that. We're almost done, we really are. So he's already getting very upset, right? Should I end now?
I think one more final statement would be nice.
Okay, statement.
Thank you so much,
so
Niko.
you really are very... Time is important. Yeah. So all we're going to say here is that Netherlands is very far in programmatic, and this is also you playing in programmatic. This is really, really great. A partner of ours, IOTA, has supplied us with data that's not available. It shows that audience segments are rising in the Netherlands very, very rapidly. And look at that growth last year. The growth is eclipsing the growth in the UK. The growth is eclipsing the growth in Germany. So we have an incredible environment in the Netherlands. And of course, we also have companies taking advantage of that. I could be picking many companies, many Dutch media companies who are very advanced. I'll pick Sanoma, for example, they won a data award last year by combining all of their 60 properties into one holistic customer experience, combining it with third-party data. This is something that also other media groups in other European countries should be doing. This is made in Holland. This is a fantastic place, and we love it, and I'm finished.
We love Holland. Thank you so much, Niko. Excellent. One follow-up question?
Thank you.
Don't get me wrong, we could listen to you for hours, and we love your data, but we're on a very strict schedule.
Yes, I'm very, very sorry. How much was I over? Oh, dear, it doesn't even show anymore.
Like we call it a Hollands kwartiertje. It's,
Thank you.
I saw a lot of people taking pictures of your slides, and you have many more. Will you be sharing your slide deck with us?
I think if MWG allows it, yes.
I had one job. Yes.
Oh, if MWG allows it, of course we'll share.
Okay, of course. We'll allow it. Ladies and gentlemen, Nico Waesche. Thank you so much.